the black screen came up, screensaver, and made the video stop. So I'm just going to continue really quick. I'm Little Miss hard on myself, and particularly when it comes to other people's lives and the well-being of animals. And I just wanted to make sure that I was a somewhat better rider. I was a good enough rider to take people out on that beach. I'm not a terrible rider, but I'm just hard on myself. And again, we're dealing with people's lives. And so I wanted training. I wanted real training. I wasn't even, I was promised training. I wasn't even really receiving any real training. I went out on a few rides with Jorge, like a handful of rides in the 3 months I was there. That's not training. And it was really just me. It was just us riding along the beach on a horse. And clocking where, everything was that, where, certain turning points and such, and the crossing point at the water, which I was doing a better job of figuring out, like, key, landmark things to look for, to where you should cross, than even Jorge was in the end, because, like, Jorge and Jeremy Edwards were using, like, bushes on the beach and sticks and stuff, and it's like, I mean, like, that's one marker you could use, but, like, how about stuff that won't wash away with a storm? How about stuff that isn't so subject to change? So I was using, like, buildings in the background, also the breaks in the tree line, certain large breaks in the tree line in the horizon. Anyway, like, I'm hard on myself. I always have been. That's what gets me a lot of achievements and successes, and gets me places in life to some degree. And I'm really hard on myself when it comes to a situation that could risk people's lives. I think that's necessary. So I just wanted more training. I made that clear to them that I made it clear to Jeremy Edwards over the phone that was one of my bigger concerns. It really, like, it wasn't all my concern, but I didn't want to get into actually a lot of my concerns over the phone with him in the barn office. I wasn't even planning thinking I was going to have to speak to him. I was venting to Jorge, my coworker, like 10 minutes prior, about how I was reconsidering the job. And then I got a call from Jeremy Edwards. And he told me in that conversation that he sees everything that goes on in that barn. So, yeah. Just absolutely freaking ridiculous. Let me see if any of these come up. Yep, there we go. There's, like, I think that's the one we sort of settled on. That's the cocktail menu. Anybody who goes to the centers of High Point, to the High Point Resort in North Carolina, if you're sitting there cocktail hour looking at this kind of menu, guess what? I designed it, and they paid me through PayPal with it, but then they couldn't pay me the rest of my paychecks through PayPal. And it jammed me up real bad. Getting my medicine, getting food. Yeah. I was down to the point where I was, like, eating spoonfuls of sugar. It got almost that bad. It got that bad over the summer in the dunes, because I was just starting a job, and I had next to no money and next to no food. I had just come back across the country and spent most of the rest of my money, my savings, coming back across the country from out in California where I'd been. And found that the one RV park in my hometown was $2,500 a month, which I wasn't expecting, because that's the highest I've ever heard of a monthly price for an RV park. And I was staying in an RV park out in LA. It was half that much. And plus, that RV park closes down in the winter, which I didn't realize till I got back home. So then I was parked up out in the dunes with no running water or electricity, and biking around the island to work, and barely eating, and just living off spoonfuls of sugar some days. And I was right back and I thought, like, my luck had really changed and turned around when I heard about work camping positions and started looking at work camping jobs. And this was one of the first ones I applied to. I applied to others. I heard back from others. I could have gone to other work camping jobs. But this one seemed the most appealing, particularly for the fact that I was told they wanted someone for a long-term position. And I wanted to settle somewhere for a while and not bounce around. Because I've been bouncing around for over a year. So I thought my luck had really changed. Wow, like... But no, literally within a few weeks of working there, I was right back down to like... To eating spoonfuls of sugar because these people couldn't be bothered to just pay me my paycheck over PayPal. Oh my gosh, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, towards the end of November when I was thinking about leaving and I told Jorge about it, then suddenly Jeremy Edwards was calling me. And I even said to Jeremy, like, I wasn't expecting to have to talk to you. I was just venting to Jorge. I wasn't bringing this to you guys. You know, if I'm really thinking seriously, like, I was considering it. But if I was, like, serious about it or really thinking, I was like, I would have brought it to you guys. So I was telling Jeremy over the phone, like, I don't even know why we're having this conversation to some degree. Like, I was saying essentially that. Plus, I didn't really want him to be bothered on his vacation because I was considerate of his ass at the time. And I was like, why are you? And I figured even if it was a matter if I wanted to leave the job. I figured that was something that should have been handled by the owners or another manager or something like that and not Jeremy, considering Jeremy was on vacation. He might have been the manager of the barn, but he was on vacation. So the fact that he was even calling me in the barn office, I was like, why? I mean, I knew immediately, like, oh, Jorge just called him and told him what I was saying to Jorge, like, literally 10 to 15 minutes prior. So, yeah. I was like, what? Jorge told Jeremy that I'm reconsidering the job and bothered him on his vacation and was standing there in the barn office going like, do I even want to take this call right now? I can't even believe that boss is getting bothered on his vacation because I was venting to a coworker that I just don't really know if this job was working out for me, if I'm good for it. Things are weird around here. It's just, yeah. But Jeremy called me and said he had the backing of David Saintsing and that they really, really wanted me to stay. And so that bought them another month with me there. So that meant that Jeremy could stay for his full vacation and not hustle back to the island a month early and cut his vacation off. Because who are they going to get that's an American citizen to work in that barn for just a month, like to come all the way out there for just a month? They'd have to really trick someone then, wow. And or I guess Amanda would have been an option, except I don't think Jeremy wants to work with Amanda, and I don't think Amanda wants to work with Jeremy, to be perfectly honest. Again, I was told repeatedly by a few sources when I first got out there that Amanda had been bullied out of the barn, that Jeremy Edwards bullies women out of that barn. I thought at first that they just didn't like that he barks at people sometimes, which I consider acceptable. If it's a life or death situation, you don't necessarily have the time to stop and consider someone's feelings when they're doing something that's going to get them killed or someone else killed. I understand that. But now I can see how there might have been women getting bullied out of that barn. Yeah, definitely. Especially because women are more empathetic. And especially empathetic towards horses and animals and their living experience. And we don't typically like to see neglect of animals or abuse of animals. Neglect is just another form of abuse. So we don't like to see animals abused. We don't like to see them ignored. We don't like to see that they have an open wound on their ankle for months and nothing is really being done about it. Just like window dressings being slapped on it and then it's being ignored. We don't like seeing such things. We have empathy and compassion that moves us to do something about those things. Like, I don't know, bother the shit out of the owner. Like, hey, I was bothering Jorge about it. And because Jorge seemed to have a better relationship with David. He seemed to have a closer relationship with David. So I was hoping and Jorge was my better in the barn. Like, he knew more about horses to begin with. I can concede that. It was made very clear to me by Jeremy Edwards, the manager of the barn, that Jorge was his representative in that barn while Jeremy was away. And that I was to follow Jorge's orders as if they were Jeremy's. So I was under chain of command. I was placed underneath Jorge in chain of command. So I did bother Jorge to some degree, fairly regularly brought it up. Like, Shania's ankle's still looking kind of, like, at the very least, hoping that this shit's going to make it back to David's ears. And, that something will be done about it. Because at this point, Jorge is already warning me that David's cheap and don't bother him too much about needing anything that's going to cost money for the horses. So I didn't want to overstep my bounds. I didn't want to risk my jobs after just starting it by, like, bothering the shit out of David about, like, hey, maybe you should take care of this horse that is your responsibility and pay for a vet. I was hoping Jorge would have a better way of handling that. You know, he'd been working for David longer. And I also hoped that David would maybe take Jorge's word for it a bit more than he would take my word for it, since Jorge had more experience with horses. But then I started, towards the end of my 3 months there, started to realize, like, Jorge will just do whatever he can to patch up things around there without asking David for anything, because he understands David doesn't want to have to pay for anything. And the best way for him to keep his job there is to just make it look like they're doing their best for the horses, but really they're just slapping window dressing on them and on that barn. And they're neglecting a lot of stuff that it's shameful. So anyway, yeah, sorry I'm rambling on, and this was just supposed to be a quick proof video about they absolutely could have paid me over PayPal. One more time, here it is, right here, PayPal. Right here. I asked if she wanted to pay me through PayPal, and right here she says PayPal is fine. That's from Elaine Crowell, the HR manager for David Saintsing and Jeff Krumsick. Or at least for David Saintsing. I don't know how much they're partnered in, he and Jeff. So, yep. All right, I'm going to end it.